The beating starts at 14:20 hours, November 8, 1972, Fire Support Base Sheridan, Tay Ninh Province. 8 North Vietnamese women, POWs, are being held separate from male prisoners. American procedure recognizing the potential for internal conflict. That separation is about to fail. US Army Sergeant Michael Torres, Guard Detail Commander, age 27, on his third tour, watches as a North Vietnamese male officer strikes a female prisoner across the face. Hard. Vicious. The woman falls. The male officer raises his hand to strike again. Torres moves without thinking, without calculating the consequences. He interposes his body between the male officer and the fallen woman, blocking the second strike with his presence alone. This is the story of November 8th, 1972, when 8 Vietnamese women POWs were beaten by their own male commanders for betraying the revolution through capture, and American soldiers violated standing orders to protect them. How women who had been systematically taught that Americans were monsters discovered that Americans would protect them from their own leaders. How the protection they received destroyed years of indoctrination in a single afternoon, and how one unauthorized, improper but morally correct intervention taught everyone present that honor means protecting the defenseless, regardless of politics or regulations. If you want stories about conscience transcending orders, where human decency defeats ideology and protection defines honor, hit subscribe. Because what happens when Torres steps between that officer and that woman defines everything about American character that propaganda never prepared these women for. About soldiers who can't stand by and watch women being beaten, even when those women are enemies. About conscience that demands intervention, even when intervention violates orders. About 8 women discovering that the enemy protected them when their own leaders attacked them. About protection that destroyed indoctrination through the simple act of Americans being exactly what propaganda said they could never be, protectors, not predators. What revolutionary discipline means for captured women. North Vietnamese army political doctrine is unforgiving. Death before capture. Surrender is betrayal. Being captured alive when you could have fought to the death represents ideological failure of the worst kind. This doctrine applies with devastating force to women soldiers. Women in the Revolutionary Army exist to prove a point, that women's equality comes through revolutionary dedication, that revolutionary consciousness transcends gender, that women fighters are living propaganda proving the revolution liberates women through militancy. Every woman soldier serves as a political statement about ideology's transformative power, which means that women soldiers who are captured alive don't just fail militarily. They contradict everything their presence is supposed to prove. Women captured become evidence that women are weak, that they can't match men's revolutionary dedication, that gender matters despite ideology claiming it doesn't. Women POWs become proof that women shouldn't be soldiers in the first place. They validate the traditional gender hierarchy that revolution claims to transcend. They embarrass the commanders who recruited them. They become targets. And North Vietnamese male officers, especially political officers who stake their reputations on women soldiers, proving their worth, hate captured women for this failure. They hate them for surviving when they saw they should have died fighting. They hate them for being captured when they should have used grenades on themselves. They hate them for embarrassing the unit through survival, for proving critics right about women's weakness, for validating traditional gender hierarchy, for demonstrating that revolutionary ideology cannot actually transcend biological reality. Senior Lieutenant Pham Van Duc embodies this hatred perfectly. At 38, he's a political officer and hardline ideologist who built his entire career on the belief that women soldiers could prove their worth. He recruited women into his unit personally, argued for their inclusion against conservative commanders who doubted, fought critics who said women weaken combat effectiveness. He staked his reputation on women soldiers demonstrating revolutionary ideology's correctness. The women in his unit were his political statement, his proof that ideology works, his demonstration that revolutionary consciousness transcends gender. Then Operation Jefferson Glen happened. His unit was overrun by Americans, his men fought to the last round or died fighting. But his women, they surrendered. They were captured while treating wounded. They chose survival over martyrdom. Every woman captured became evidence that Duke was wrong about women soldiers. Every woman who surrendered became ammunition for the critics who had doubted his policies. His career was damaged, his reputation compromised, his ideology questioned, all because the women he recruited survived instead of dying to validate his theory. He hates them for this with a hatred that is personal, professional, and ideological all at once. And that hatred is about to manifest as violence disguised as maintaining revolutionary discipline among prisoners. This is what's about to happen. This is what American soldiers are about to witness. This is what Torres is about to stop. 1415 to 1420 hours. The violence begins. The 8 Vietnamese women, ages 19 to 29, captured during Operation Jefferson Glen 3 days earlier, have been held in a separate section of the prisoner compound. Medical screening requires moving them through the central processing area one at a time, which means walking past the male prisoner's compound. It creates visibility, it creates recognition, it creates the potential for confrontation. The senior woman among the prisoners is Nguyen Thi Hanh, aged 29, a former medic captured while treating wounded. She's the first one scheduled for processing. As she walks toward the processing facility with her American guards, she has to pass by the male prisoner's compound. The male POWs see her immediately. They recognize her. She served in the same unit, fought in the same battle. The shouting begins almost instantly. They scream at her in Vietnamese. Their voice is vicious and brutal. The translator, an older Vietnamese man hired locally, looks uncomfortable and doesn't translate at first. Torres notices and insists. The translator complies reluctantly, his voice quiet with shame as he conveys the words. They're calling her traitor, calling her coward, calling her whore, saying she surrendered to spread her legs for Americans, saying she betrayed the revolution through sexual surrender, saying she brought shame to the unit, saying she proved women are weak. Torres stares as the translator's words sink in. Revolutionary discipline is revealing itself as nothing more than misogyny wrapped in ideology, traditional gender hatred dressed up in political language. He watches Han's face as the abuse continues, sees the shame wash over her features, sees the humiliation bow her head. She's a woman bearing abuse from her own commanders, unable to respond because that would mean insubordination, unable to defend herself because that would mean arguing with superiors, unable to escape because she's a prisoner walking an escorted path to medical screening. Torres has 3 daughters at home, Emily aged 12, Sarah aged 9, Jessica aged 6. He writes them letters every week, carries their photos in a wallet worn smooth from constant handling, talks about them to other soldiers whenever he gets the chance. His daughters are why he's here, why he endures this war, why he fights to come home. And watching Han being verbally destroyed by her own commanders for the crime of surviving, he sees his daughters in her shame. His protective instincts, dormant since arriving in Vietnam, because there have been no daughters here to protect, and suddenly activates with overwhelming force. The processing area is a shared space where women are being brought through for medical screening while male prisoners are being relocated simultaneously for interrogation. American oversight is present. Security is maintained. Everything is controlled and monitored according to procedure until Duke sees the women, his unit's women, his political statement walking past in American custody, his career destroyed, walking in a line, his ideology contradicted by their existence as prisoners instead of martyrs. All because these women survived when they should have died. Duke stands abruptly, his chair scraping. He ignores the American guards who immediately order him to sit down, ignores the regulations requiring prisoners to remain seated, ignores everything except his rage and his need to punish the women who destroyed his career. He approaches the women's line quickly, moving with purpose, his face contorted with fury, his fists clenched, his eyes locked on his targets. American guards move to intercept, but Duke is a political officer who doesn't take orders from enlisted guards. He pushes past them, breaks through their attempts to restrain him, and reaches the first woman before they can stop him. Tran Thi Mai, age 22, a former radio operator, the youngest woman he personally recruited, is proof that even young women could handle combat. Duke strikes Mai with an open hand across her face. The blow is vicious, delivered with full force, channeling all his rage and humiliation and destroyed career into a single strike. The sound cracks across the compound like a gunshot. Mai's head snaps sideways from the impact and she falls, hitting the ground hard. Duke stands over her, screaming as the translator struggles to keep up with his words. "You betrayed us. You survived when you should have died. You proved women are weak. You destroyed everything. You ruined my career. You're a disgrace." He raises his hand to strike again, this time with a closed fist. Torres moves. He doesn't think about regulations explicitly prohibiting physical contact between American soldiers and prisoners. He doesn't consider the chain of command or political implications or diplomatic complications or career consequences. He considers only the immediate reality in front of him. A man is beating a woman who could be his daughter, and he's stopping it right now. Torres crosses the compound in 4 strides, covering 40 feet in seconds with the pure reaction speed honed by 3 tours in combat. He interposes his body between Duke and Mai, catches Duke's wrist mid-swing, and stops the strike with an iron grip. 6 feet tall, standing between a Vietnamese officer and a fallen woman, he becomes a physical barrier, a human shield, protection embodied. Duke struggles, tries to push past Torres, tries to reach around him to get to Mai lying on the ground. He's screaming, his face inches from Torres's face, spittle flying as the translator conveys his words. "She is my soldier, my responsibility, my discipline to enforce. Americans have no authority over revolutionary discipline. This is an internal Vietnamese matter. She must be punished." Torres doesn't move. His voice is calm, cold, absolutely certain. "No, you don't touch her. You don't touch any of them. Not while I'm here. They're prisoners. Our prisoners. Under our protection. That means protected. That means safe. That means nobody touches them. Not you, not anyone. You want to hit someone? Try hitting me. See what happens." He's making it clear, making it personal, forcing a binary choice. Stop or fight an American sergeant and see how that works out for a political officer who only has courage when facing defenseless subordinates. Other American guards arrive within seconds. 4 more Marines surrounding Duke and creating an overwhelming show of force. The threat is neutralized. Duke is escorted away, still shouting threats and accusations, but doing nothing. All words and no action now that he faces opponents who can fight back. The women watch as American soldiers physically remove the Vietnamese officer who was attacking them. Mai is still on the ground, her face swelling where Duke struck her, her lip bleeding, her cheek bruising. But she's not crying from the physical pain. She's crying from confusion, from the cognitive dissonance of discovering that the enemy just protected her from her own commander. Torres helps Mai to her feet with careful gentleness, checking for injuries beyond the obvious facial trauma. Through the translator, his voice is soft and genuinely concerned. "Are you hurt? Do you need medical attention? Anything broken?" Mai stares at him through her tears, unable to process what just happened. Propaganda taught her that Americans are brutal and cruel, that they're violent toward Vietnamese women, that they're rapists and monsters. But an American sergeant just protected her, just prevented a beating, just stood between her and violence, just challenged her own officer to defend her safety. She speaks in Vietnamese, her voice soft and overwhelmed. "Thank you, but why? Why did you protect me? I am your enemy. He is my commander. This is our internal matter. Why would an American intervene?" Torres looks at her and sees a young woman who could be his daughter in 10 years, in a different world, under different circumstances. He responds simply, honestly, because it's wrong. A man beating a woman is wrong. A commander beating a subordinate who can't defend herself is wrong. It doesn't matter what nationality you are. It doesn't matter what the politics are. Wrong is wrong. I have 3 daughters at home. I'd want someone to stop a man from beating my daughters if they were in your situation. So I stop men from beating other people's daughters. That's honour. That's what being a soldier means. Protecting people who can't protect themselves, even when those people are supposed to be your enemies. Mai stares at him as his words, translated, sink in. An American sergeant just explained honour in terms that transcend nationality, just demonstrated a protection instinct that propaganda claimed Americans don't possess, just destroyed everything she believed about American character through a single act of intervention. The tears come harder now, not from pain, but from gratitude and confusion and relief, all mixed together. Everything she was taught is contradicting everything she's experiencing. The enemy protected her when her own commander attacked her. The enemy proved more honourable than her own side. The pattern repeats, every woman protected. The processing continues, and there are 6 more women waiting. The male POWs are watching everything, understanding now that American guards will intervene, but their pride and ideology demand that they test this understanding anyway. More officers approach the women, more abuse begins, more violence is threatened. The second woman, Nguyen Thi Hanh, age 24, a former nurse, is approached by Senior Captain Tran Thi Mai. He doesn't make the mistake of striking her immediately. Instead, he stands close, invading her space, looming over her, intimidating through presence alone. His voice is vicious as he speaks in Vietnamese. "You disgrace my command. You should have died treating the wounded. You should have fought with a captured rifle when your ammunition ran out. You are a disgrace." Corporal James Mitchell, age 23, steps between Min and Huang before the verbal abuse can escalate into physical violence. The protection is preemptive, the intervention coming before harm rather than after. Min steps back, unable to enforce his revolutionary discipline with Americans physically interposing themselves. Huang watches as this young American corporal protects her without being asked, without being ordered, simply because protection is what American soldiers do. Her eyes fill with tears, another woman discovering that the enemy protects her. The pattern continues through the 3rd, 4th and 5th women. Male commanders approach, verbal abuse flows, threatened violence builds, and American guards intervene consistently. The protection becomes a pattern. The defense becomes standard operating procedure. The standing between becomes an automatic American response. Torres and his guards are making it crystal clear through repeated action. Violence against women prisoners will not be tolerated, regardless of who commits it, regardless of claims about revolutionary discipline, regardless of internal Vietnamese politics. Women under American protection are protected. Period. No exceptions. The 6th woman is Pham Thi Nga, age 19, the youngest, a former messenger who looks even younger than her years. She's approached by the political officer Le Van Can, age 35, an ideologue whose entire identity is built on ideology's correctness. He's learned from Duke's tactical failure and doesn't threaten physical violence. Instead, he uses words as weapons, calculated to destroy psychologically, without giving Americans anything physical to stop. His voice is vicious and precise as he speaks. "You're proof that women shouldn't be soldiers. You embarrassed every woman in the People's Army through your weakness. You are the reason women will be removed from combat roles. You destroyed decades of progress. You proved that women are weak, cowardly, unsuitable for military service. You personally destroyed the women's liberation movement through your individual cowardice. Every woman's opportunity is blocked because you failed. Every woman's advancement is prevented because you surrendered. You ruined everything for everyone." Nga is collapsing under the weight of his words. Not from physical violence, but from verbal destruction. She's 19 years old and being told she personally ruined women's liberation, that she's responsible for policy changes that will harm all women, that she proved women are inferior. The psychological assault is crushing her, making her bear guilt for an entire revolutionary gender project's failures. Specialist Robert Chen, age 22, Chinese-American, and able to speak some Vietnamese, approaches Khanh before he can finish destroying this teenager. Chen speaks directly in Vietnamese, his voice cold and controlled. Stop right now, you're blaming a child for the system's failures. You're making a 19-year-old girl responsible for ideology's contradictions. You're destroying a young woman with psychological warfare because you cannot face the truth. The system is wrong, not her. The policy that sends women into combat and then blames women for being captured is wrong. The ideology that claims gender equality while maintaining gender hierarchy is wrong. She is not a disgrace, you are. You're a leader who failed his soldiers. You're a commander who blames subordinates for your own failures. You're a coward who only attacks defenseless people. She is a victim of your failure, of the system's failure, of ideology's failure. Leave her alone, walk away, or I will protect her from your words the same way Sergeant Torres protected the others from fists. Words are violence when words destroy. I am stopping you. Walk away now. Khanh stares at Chen in stunned silence. A Chinese-American specialist, an enlisted soldier with junior rank, just lectured a Vietnamese political officer about revolutionary ideology's contradictions. An enemy soldier just analysed the Vietnamese political system's failures with greater clarity than Khanh has achieved in decades of political education. An American just spoke a truth that Khan's entire career depends on denying, that his entire identity is built on not acknowledging, that his entire worldview is constructed around never admitting. Khanh is defeated not physically but ideologically, intellectually, morally. He cannot argue because arguing would require admitting Chen is right. He cannot defend because defending would require justifying the unjustifiable. He retreats, turns, walks away, saying nothing, because staying would mean confronting a truth that destroys everything he is. Nga watches this 18-year-old American specialist defend her from a 35-year-old Vietnamese political officer. She watches an enemy soldier protect her from her own ideological authority. She watches an American analyse her system's failures to prove she's not responsible for those failures. She watches a stranger fight for her, using words as weapons against words as weapons. And she cries, not from pain, but from gratitude and relief, an understanding that she's not a disgrace but a victim, that the enemy just showed more compassion than her own officers, that propaganda lied about everything important. The 7th and 8th women receive the same protection. The pattern is now fully established. Every woman is defended. Every threat is blocked. Every potential violence is prevented. 8 women experiencing the same protection. 8 women receiving the same defense. 8 women understanding the same truth. The enemy protects them. 8 women learning that Americans are human, not monsters. 8 women crying from gratitude that propaganda never prepared them to feel. Why did you protect us? After the processing is complete, Han makes a formal request through American command. She wants to speak with Sergeant Torres to understand why he protected them. The request is unusual, but immediately approved. Torres agrees to the meeting. They sit across from each other in the processing facility with an interpreter present, the setting formal, but the conversation about to become deeply personal. Han speaks carefully in Vietnamese, her words translated. Sergeant Torres, I need to understand something. Why did you protect us? Why did American soldiers intervene? Why did the enemy defend the enemy? We are North Vietnamese soldiers, your enemies. We fought against you. We tried to kill Americans. My unit killed Americans in battle. We are prisoners now, defeated and powerless. We are women who failed our commanders by being captured instead of dying. We are a disgrace to our units according to revolutionary standards. Why would an American sergeant protect Vietnamese women? Why would the enemy show honor? Why do Americans care about our safety? Why did you violate your regulations to protect us? She pauses, emotions building, then continues. I need to know because everything I was taught says Americans wouldn't do this. Everything propaganda promised says Americans are cruel to Vietnamese, especially to women. Everything ideology taught says Americans exploit captured women. Everything I believed says Americans are monsters incapable of basic human decency toward Vietnamese. But you protected us, you defended us. You stood between violence and victims. You showed honor when ideology says Americans have no honor. You demonstrated humanity when propaganda says Americans are inhuman. You proved propaganda wrong about everything important. Why? What is the truth about Americans? Torres considers the question carefully, then speaks honestly from the heart rather than from any regulation manual. I protected you because it was right, because a man was beating a woman and I could stop it, because violence against prisoners is wrong, because hitting women is wrong. Your being my enemy doesn't change the fact that hitting you is wrong. Your being captured doesn't mean you deserve violence. None of those things remove your right to basic human dignity. Wrong is wrong, regardless of politics, nationality, ideology, or military discipline. I saw something wrong happening. I had the power to stop it, so I stopped it. It's that simple. He pauses, his voice softening. I have 3 daughters. Emily is 12, Sarah is 9, Jessica is 6. I think about them constantly, every day, every hour, sometimes every minute, when the fighting gets bad and I need a reason to survive. I write them letters every week. I carry their photos right here. He touches his breast pocket. I look at their faces when I need to remember why I'm here, why I'm enduring this war, why I'm fighting to survive and go home to them. And I think, what if my daughters were in a war someday? What if they were soldiers who got captured by an enemy? What if their own commanders blamed them for being captured instead of being? What if their own officers beat them for surviving? I'd want someone to protect them. Anyone. Even an enemy soldier, even a stranger. I'd want someone to stand between violence and my daughters, regardless of who the violent men are or what authority they claim. I'd want someone to show my daughters that not all men are brutal, that not all soldiers are cruel, that not all enemies are monsters. So I protect other people's daughters. It's that simple. It's that human. It's what any father would do, what any decent person should do. You're someone's daughter. Someone loves you. Someone raised you from a baby into a woman. Someone taught you everything you know. Someone cares about you deeply, wants you safe, wants you home, waits for you, prays for you. I protected you for them. For your parents who love you, for your family who waits for you. That's honor. That's humanity. That's everything. Han cries quietly as his words, translated, sink in. She's hearing an American sergeant explain honor in terms that transcend nationality and politics and ideology. She's understanding that the enemy sees her as a human being deserving protection, not as an enemy deserving punishment. She's learning that an American father protected a Vietnamese daughter because protecting daughters is simply what fathers do, regardless of nationality. She's discovering that humanity transcends politics, that decency transcends ideology, that propaganda lied systematically and completely about American character. She speaks quietly through her tears. Thank you for protecting us, for defending us, for showing us the truth, for proving propaganda wrong, for treating us with dignity that our own commanders denied us, for standing between violence and victims, for being decent when you didn't have to be, for being human when propaganda said you were monsters. Thank you for everything. Torres nods simply. You're welcome. You deserved protection. You deserved dignity. You deserved someone standing between violence and you. The meeting ends. Han leaves the room changed, carrying the truth home with her, ready to spread it, ready to become living counter-propaganda through her experience of Americans being exactly what ideology said they could never be. The consequence and the change. Torres files a formal report documenting his intervention, acknowledging that he violated standing orders, accepting full responsibility. He's not regretting his actions, his conscience is clear and his honor is intact. But he's prepared to face whatever consequences his disobedience might bring. Command reviews the incident and begins an investigation to determine whether the intervention was proper according to regulations, whether the protection was justified under standing orders, whether confronting Vietnamese officers was appropriate given diplomatic considerations. The investigation reveals a complex picture. Technically, factually, clearly, Torres violated standing orders. American soldiers were explicitly forbidden from intervening in internal Vietnamese prisoner matters. Regulations were clear that prisoners' internal discipline was their concern, not American concern. Policy was explicit about maintaining separation between Vietnamese POW internal hierarchy and American oversight. Torres intervened anyway. He stopped Vietnamese officers from disciplining Vietnamese soldiers. He interfered in Vietnamese revolutionary discipline enforcement. The violation is documented, proven, undeniable. But the investigation also reveals the context. Torres prevented violence against defenseless prisoners. He stopped beatings of women who couldn't protect themselves. He maintained American responsibility for prisoner safety. He upheld American values regarding the treatment of women. He demonstrated honor under difficult circumstances. He acted on conscience when conscience conflicted with regulations. He chose protecting people over following procedure, chose doing right over doing proper, chose humanity over regulations. Command faces a dilemma. Do they punish a soldier for violating orders while doing something morally correct? Do they reward a soldier for protecting prisoners while violating regulations? How do they reconcile regulations with conscience, orders with honor? The decision acknowledges the complexity. Torres receives a formal reprimand for violating standing orders. A letter goes in his personnel file documenting the regulation breach, creating an official record that shows Torres violated orders. It's a minor career impact, but it's present. But Torres also receives a commendation for upholding American values, for protecting prisoners from abuse, for demonstrating honor under difficult circumstances, for making the correct moral choice when regulations contradicted morality, for showing the courage to violate orders when those orders were wrong. He's both punished and praised, both reprimanded and recognized, both wrong procedurally and right morally. More importantly, the orders themselves are changed. Following the Torres incident and the investigation that revealed how American regulations had prevented American soldiers from protecting prisoners from violence, the regulations are modified. New orders are issued throughout the theatre. American guards are now authorized to intervene to prevent violence against any prisoner, regardless of nationality or internal hierarchy. American soldiers are now formally responsible for preventing prisoner abuse, regardless of the source of that abuse. Torres's intervention becomes policy. His conscience becomes doctrine. His honor becomes standing orders. One sergeant's protection becomes everyone's obligation. Torres changed military policy by choosing right over proper, by demonstrating that humanity matters more than procedure, by proving that conscience produces better outcomes than blind obedience. He's vindicated not just personally but systemically. His honor is recognized not just individually but institutionally. Protection is standardized not just for Torres but for all American soldiers. Everything he believed is proven correct through policy change. Everything he did is validated officially through doctrine modification. Conscience defeats orders not just in the moment but permanently. Humanity defeats procedure not just individually but military-wide. One act of protection changes American military policy. One intervention rewrites regulations. One sergeant's conscience becomes doctrine affecting thousands. Vindicated. Completely. Permanently, officially, forever. Today, the woman who remembers. Nguyen Thi Hanh is 81 years old now, living in Hanoi, a retired teacher who has spent decades teaching history. She always tells the story of November 8th, 1972. She always tells her students about the American sergeant who protected 8 Vietnamese women from their own commanders. I was taught that Americans were monsters, she tells her students. For years, I believed it completely. Propaganda was my only knowledge of Americans until November 8th, 1972. That was the day an American sergeant protected me from my own commander. That was the day propaganda met reality. That was the day everything changed. My commander wanted to beat me, wanted to punish me for being captured instead of dying. An American sergeant named Michael Torres stopped him. Torres was a father of 3 daughters, Emily, Sarah and Jessica. He told me he protected me because he would want someone to protect his daughters if they were ever in my situation. He stood between my commander and me. He protected me. He showed honor that my own commander didn't possess. The enemy protected me from my own people. That truth destroyed everything I had believed. I teach my students now that propaganda works through isolation. It controls your perception when you can't verify the claims. I believed the propaganda about Americans because I'd never met Americans. When that American sergeant protected me, the propaganda collapsed instantly. Reality defeated the lies. Truth defeated indoctrination. Human contact defeated conditioning. One act of protection destroyed years of propaganda. That's propaganda's weakness. Reality eventually arrives. I tell my students to question what they're taught about people they've never met. Verify before you believe. Meet people before you judge them. Let reality inform your understanding. Don't believe propaganda about enemies you've never encountered. Because propaganda lies about character, about humanity, about honor. I learnt this on November 8th, 1972. I teach it now. I spread the truth that propaganda tried to hide. Americans protected 8 women from their own commanders. Americans showed the honor that ideology claimed didn't exist in capitalist soldiers. Americans demonstrated the humanity that propaganda claimed Americans lacked. Americans proved decent when ideology promised they would be cruel. Americans stood between violence and victims. Americans chose conscience over regulations. Americans risked confrontation to protect enemy women. Americans being Americans destroyed everything propaganda had taught about American character. 52 years later, I remember everything. I teach it. I tell the truth. I honor Sergeant Torres. I honor the American soldiers who protected us. I honor the humans who showed decency. I honor the men who defended women. I honor the enemies who proved they weren't enemies at all, but humans. I honor the protection they offered, the dignity they showed, the humanity they demonstrated. I honor everything that November 8th, 1972 taught me. That truth defeats lies, that reality defeats propaganda, that conscience defeats ideology. That's the lesson, that's the truth, that's everything. When students ask her what the most important lesson from the war is, she tells them, propaganda lies, but reality teaches. Truth defeats lies through human contact. Honor transcends nationality. Humanity transcends politics. Americans protected me when propaganda said they would harm me. Americans showed honor when ideology said they were dishonorable. Americans proved human when propaganda promised they were monsters. That's the truth. That's the lesson. Remember it. Question propaganda, meet people, learn truth. Because propaganda always lies, but reality always teaches the truth. Through contact, through protection offered, through humanity shown, through Americans being decent, through Torres standing between, through conscience defeating regulations, through honor transcending nationality, through humans being human. That's the truth. That's everything. The numbers, November 8th, 1972, 8. North Vietnamese women. POWs protected 6+ attempted beatings, prevented 1 American sergeant intervening first, 4 American guards following. Torres's example, 0 women harmed under American protection. Immediate consequences. Torres formally reprimanded for violating standing orders. Torres officially commended for upholding American values. Standing orders modified. Guards authorized to prevent violence against any prisoner. Policy changed. Prisoner safety transcends internal discipline. Doctrine updated. Protecting the defenseless is American duty. Long-term impact. 52 years of testimony from Han and others. Students taught about propaganda's lies and reality's truth. Truth spreading through testimony across generations. Counter-propaganda through personal experience. American honor demonstrated through protection. One intervention. 8 women protected, one sergeant choosing conscience over orders, multiple guards following his example. One moment defining what honor means when tested by violence and ideology. Propaganda promised cruelty, but reality showed protection. Ideology claimed Americans were monsters, but experience proved they were humans. Teaching said Americans exploit women, but truth showed Americans defend women. Indoctrination promised Americans were dishonorable, but contact demonstrated they choose honor over regulations. Everything was learned through protection. Everything was proven through standing between. Everything was taught by Torres being decent. Everything was validated through choosing right over proper. Everything was demonstrated through conscience defeating orders. 8 women were saved. 8 women were changed. 8 women became living counter-propaganda. 8 women began teaching truth. 8 women kept honoring the protection they received. 8 women remembered that Americans defended them when their own people attacked them. 8 women knew that propaganda had lied about everything important. 8 women spent decades spreading the truth. Protection defeated violence. Honor transcended nationality. Humanity transcended politics. Conscience defeated ideology. Truth defeated lies. Reality defeated propaganda. Americans proved what propaganda denied. Torres demonstrated what honor means. Soldiers protected women, men defended daughters, humans were decent, Americans were human, everything, forever.